Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you all here. So, before we kick off in just a minute, I do want to go ahead and launch a poll for all of you to answer about what's going on with SEO in your world. Feel free to answer while we're coming up at our start time. I love seeing those answers coming through on the poll. So it looks like the majority of you are currently engaged in search engine optimization. That is super exciting. When it comes to organic search traffic, some of you are seeing a decline in your organic search traffic. Some of you are holding steady. That's great. And then some of you aren't sure. So that's one little tip I'll give everyone this past year and going forward. I think one of the best things you can do in your data analytics is take a look at your organic search traffic, benchmark where you are currently, maybe even look back in time if you have analytics before, understand where you've been in the past, and then make sure you're keeping track of whether or not that organic search traffic is increasing or decreasing or staying the same. Because as search changes, that's a great indicator of how you're performing and whether or not there's problems you need to address. And it looks like the majority of you do have a web designer that you're working with regularly. Some of you don't, and then there's a couple of you that are hopefully going to have somebody soon. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail. But I do want to just suggest that if you don't have a web designer or developer on staff or as part of your marketing team, somebody that really knows your website that you're working with regularly, I think it's going to become increasingly important going forward that you have that technical vendor and resource at your fingertips to navigate changes and to just help you adjust things on your website, especially on the technical end. So we're going to go ahead and get started because I have a lot to pack in today. And I know we've got just the hour that we're going to be here. First things first, I just want to share a little announcement about what's going on here at Learn Tourism. Many of you know that I've been hosting the DIY Tourism Conference here in Asheville for 8 years, but we recently announced that we are now going to become the Learn Tourism Conference, which I'm really excited about. And we are going to be hosting our next conference March 9th and 10th in Richmond, Virginia. So big changes all around this year, but I'm really excited. I just got a chance to go to Richmond, and I have to say they are an amazing community, and I'm really excited to bring our conference there. So if you're interested in learning in person with me and many other cool instructors and digging into not just digital marketing, but things related to leadership, professional development, and also things related to visitor experience and customer experience, we're going to have a really new, improved, and exciting conference next March. So again, we're going to dive in and dig deep into how the SEO game has changed. So there's lots of new things going on. And as we talk about this today, I have done a few webinars on this topic in the last year, and I want to tell you, it's just going to keep changing. So what we know today may or may not be the same tomorrow, but I think the suggestions I'm going to give you today are things that are, one, accessible to everyone, no matter what kind of business or organization you're in, no matter what size or where you're located, there's going to be some valuable nuggets. And two, I think today we're going to talk about just looking towards the future so that you can really be prepared as things are changing and know what's going on. So again, we're going to talk about what's happening, knowing that there's changes possible, but hopefully a lot of this will be stuff that stays fairly evergreen, at least for the next couple of years, and you can utilize this stuff in your strategies. So I want to highlight a few things that are changing really dramatically. And these things have been changing over time, probably for 15 years. So they're not necessarily new concepts. I think if you're not in the SEO industry, you might not have been talking about them as much. And now what we're seeing is rapid acceleration. So first couple things, zero-click searches are now dominating Google. So Google has really been trying to get more and more people to just stay in the Google ecosystem, right? Use Google business listings to get directions and your phone number. Use Google Flights to book their flights to places. Use Google Shopping to shop and price compare for different products. Using Google Videos, which is mostly YouTube, to surf different video content. So they're always trying to keep us in their ecosystem. But now with AI and the AI overviews and what is eventually going to be a strong AI mode for Google search, they are really trying to keep people on Google and not necessarily sending them off to websites. So that's why some people are seeing a drop in their organic search traffic. Also, this isn't just Google, right? So Gemini, which is Google's AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI and is integrated into Bing. All of these things are evolving right now into what we call not search engines, but answer engines, right? So that means we're not just going there to type in our searches and then surf the internet. We're going to be going there to ask questions, ask for resources, ask for insights, ask for details and data and facts. And what's going to happen is we're just going to get the answers right inside of the platform. So these things have been happening, but now they are really happening. And again, if you just joined, feel free to add to the poll and I will share that in just a little bit. Next, one of the things we've been seeing again over the last probably 10 to 15 years, but is now, I think, just a big piece of the pie when it comes to thinking about how we get attention, how we get engagement from people, is that only 26% of digital searches start on Google. Now, this isn't to say that people are leaving Google, not using Google, Google's losing its stand as a global leader in the search marketplace. All of that is still true, but what we're seeing is people move between channels. They use an entire ecosystem at their fingertips of platforms in order to look for products and services and different pieces of information. So 74% of the searches out there start on social media sites, right? On other sites where they are connected to their communities and even inside of the app stores when people are using apps. It's not even just simply that the world, the ecosystem of the internet is changing, but with the advent of apps and how SEO is changing, I think we're going to see just a lot of integration there. And when people are interested in different things, they might not just look online, they might look at whether or not there is an app that can provide the service. And younger users, especially, are starting with things like TikTok or YouTube, and they are especially big users of voice search. So just talking to Google is also a big thing for them, talking to Siri, talking to their Amazon bot, whatever it is, right, to make decisions. So younger users, again, we don't see them leaving Google. We just see the way that they're behaving with Google sort of changing. Sometimes Google is what they use later on in their search, not at the beginning, which I find fascinating. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I think they're asking their friends for advice first. And then really, when we look at SEO, it's always been search engine optimization. And I think what we're really starting to realize is the searches go beyond the search engine. So, search everywhere optimization is this new perspective of SEO, right? And we really want this to be our new North Star. And I've been beating this drum for a long time in my webinars about how important it is that you see your online presence as a full ecosystem and that it has to be very intentional, very interconnected, and very consistent from a brand perspective in order to really make an impression now. And you might find that many of the people that engage with your brand actually do it across different channels, right? So building a healthy online ecosystem for your brand is going to be really important, especially as search engines become answer engines. And essentially, we see people just engaging with a bot in order to get the information that they need. So, one thing that I've actually shared in a number of different keynotes and classes is how important it is to be talking to the AI right now about your brand. So when you get the slides, you can click on these links and dig a little bit more into how you want to explore what's going on with your brand. And one of the things that I'm going to suggest is that you potentially use an incognito window when you're doing this, that you use the free tools and you don't necessarily log in first, and that basically maybe you even ask a friend, a partner, a team member, somebody else that's maybe not as connected into the marketing of the company and maybe even doesn't know the brand as well to go out and ask a series of questions to help you learn more about what is going on, when the AI understands your business, your organization, your region, your products and services, what is it that they know and don't know? And where are there potential for mistakes to be made? So I'm just going to encourage you to do this. It's more, there's a whole framework that I work on. We don't have time to get into that today. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to present additional content down the road about this. But I think in the very beginning, the least you can do is go to some of these sites and just start typing in specific questions. We're going to go over the questions in just a minute, but I want to show you just a quick example of this. So I did just a quick example so we could look at something on Google that I think is a great exercise. So I typed in, what are the coolest things to do with kids in Asheville? Now you'll notice on my Google app, right at the top, it has AI mode, all forums, short videos, images, right? So you can see Google is diversifying how we can explore the different types of content right inside of their search app on my phone. And AI mode is also available. Once I do the search, you'll see I've got at the top the maps, which gives me some information. Then there's some highlights of different events that are happening. There's some locations in Asheville right below that in that second screenshot, like Annie's homemade ice cream, right? And if you keep scrolling down, it's going to eventually give me this button that says dive deeper in AI mode. So the AI overviews are at the top. They're pulling in from all of the different Google verticals to create an answer to your question. Then you can ask it to go deeper into AI mode. This is where it switches me into their full, what I think is their Gemini system that is going to be integrated with the search engine fully. And you can also play with Gemini separately, the same way you can ChatGPT. But you'll notice it starts outlining a very detailed answer to my question, right? So outdoor adventures, including mountain biking, zip lining, hiking, family-friendly parks, goes into indoor exploration and creativity, the National Museum of Science, the Children's Museum, art classes and workshops. Then it goes into unique and interesting activities. And as I'm scrolling through this information on my Google app on my phone, I'll see these little links that I've highlighted. If I click those links, it is actually going to source for me where it's getting some of this information. I can also just ask in the chat, where are you sourcing this info? And the reason I love to ask those questions sometimes is because I can see it's answering a question. Whether the answer is incorrect or correct, sometimes I want to know where it got that answer. So did it come from our website? Did it come from some other website? And so you can continue to ask those questions and drill down just by seeing, like, is information about your brand showing up when somebody asks this type of question, right? Again, this is a way to navigate Google or Bing or any of the systems just by asking them a question that you know is relevant to your audiences and your customers, your visitors, right? Now, as a marketer, of course, I want to start digging deep into whether or not the free AI, again, I choose free right now simply because of two things. One, I know they're not as trained up as the paid AI. And two, because I think free AI is where the public's going to go first. I'm not so sure that I think the general public is all going to be signed in to paid accounts on all these tools, right? So even if they have a paid account on ChatGPT, they may eventually be using free Gemini through Google or free Copilot through Bing. And I want to make sure that all these different systems understand our brand. So, what I've been working with different students on is how do we ask important questions and see what these bots understand about who our brands are in the world. So, this is a short list of the questions I like to ask. Of course, you can drill down into each of these questions more specifically. And like I said, I'm working now on building different frameworks for different types of businesses and organizations because I think there's some key things you really do want to ask. But you can see here, you can just ask about your brand in general to start. Then you can start asking about your products and services. What does it know about those products and services, right? How do those products and services compare to some of your competitors? Then you can dig into really specific things like, do you know where our physical location is? What is the address? What are the hours? So you can make sure that any information the bot has about that is up to date and accurate. Ask about your mission, vision, and values. So, does it understand not just what the brand offers from a product and service perspective, but does it understand more of the personality and flavor and character of your brand? You can even ask it what awards and recognitions your business or organization has won. You can start to ask it questions about the founder, the owner, different staff members that have been recognized. Anything that has garnered attention through social media or through public relations, any of that stuff could potentially be out there and the bots have learned about it. You can also ask them questions like, what makes my business or brand unique and different from other competitors, right? You can ask why people would choose your brand instead of another brand. All of these things, I think, help you get a bigger picture of what the bots understand about your brand at this time, what you offer, and who you're really right for. So you could even start to ask it questions about who are the audiences of our brand, right? So again, you can drill down more specifically into these sort of buckets of thinking. But the cool thing is when you're using the free tools, and I'm going to suggest that you don't prompt, that you actually just talk to the bots, what you're going to find is that you're able to unearth inaccurate information more quickly. And when you find inaccurate information, you can literally tell the free version of any of these tools, hey, you have incorrect information. Here is the correct information. It's best found on our website over here, right? So you can offer a little bit of that training vibe in response to anything that they give you that is not 100% accurate or reflective of who your brand is. So keeping in mind with all AI, it's a relationship, right? They're helping us, but we're also teaching them in the process. So, a few other points I want to bring home because I think it's important. First and foremost, why AI can't replace us. I know it's hard right now because there's many different ways where I think AI is going to be highly disruptive, right, in our lives. I don't even think that's personal or professional only. I think it's also personal. So I do think there is going to be disruption, questions, anxiety. I know I personally, as a marketing person and technology person, I definitely have anxiety about what we're doing. I feel like sometimes we're pushing the technology a little bit faster than we should. There's a lot of debates about that in the technology world right now. But at the same time, this is what's happening. So, how can we just feel confident that we have a role to play and that we have a voice in this mix? Most of you have heard me speak before know I really believe in my heart that the big tech companies are not the ones that get to decide how things go with AI. The public does. We do. The users do. I know sometimes it seems like they're at the top of a pyramid and they're in control of things. But the truth is, none of these big tech companies succeed without buy in from us. And so, just like social media, I really believe we have the power to make big change when it comes to the way the tech world is operating and how they're approaching things. We want to always feel that empowerment and figure out different ways that we can participate in the development of these things. But the cool thing is, even though there's going to be disruption and anxiety and questions, human strategy, human thinking, human involvement is key. So I know a lot of you are probably using AI already, and I think most of us figure out pretty quickly it's very imperfect. And especially the most important role that we play as humans is we become the quality control of the the systems. They can help us do lots of different stuff and they can be faster than us at a lot of different things, but then we have to be there to quality control the results. So, one of the cool things is Neil Patel, he's been doing amazing studies on all things related to SEO. So, if you're not familiar with him and you want to really keep up with what's happening, I definitely suggest that you follow Neil Patel, that you go to his webinars, that you check out his blog. But he's been doing a lot of cool studies. And one of the things he has figured out is that consumers can spot AI content. We can tell it's there, right? And 40% of us trust our brands less. If we feel like the content is from AI and it's generic and it looks weird and people's faces are weird or there's a rabbit with five legs or whatever it is, we spot those things pretty quickly. And that's not just younger people, right? Older people do it. I'm almost 50. I can spot AI content from a mile away when there's no quality control. So when I see that coming out of a brand, it immediately breaks my trust a little bit. Like they don't even have a person double checking to make sure their images look good or that their content is written, that sort of thing. Google also, when they did their helpful content update, They made it very clear that they're going to penalize content that has no effort, no originality, and no value. So Google has always had a principle that says more content is not always better, right? Because it creates clutter. I've always used the hashtag make the internet a better place. And that's because I'm a content marketer and I feel it's really important that we put out quality and value when we create content, not to just generate content for content's sake. And we know if we look at data, the more content you make does not necessarily equal more engagement or more sales, right? The content has to be useful and valuable to people. So let's not flood everything with a bunch of AI content that has no purpose, especially as businesses and especially as organizations, people that actually have goals. It's different when you're an individual person just trying to express yourself and have fun versus trying to serve some type of audience or multiple audiences. So at the end of the day, AI should be a creative partner, but it's not necessarily the artist. And our human insight, our empathy, the things that make our industries, our regions, our brands special are still going to be really important. And anything that AI is helping us with, we can then infuse with that, right? So I don't think that we're in danger of AI kind of taking over. For instance, you're probably still going to need an SEO person. You're probably still going to need a good web developer with understanding of coding to do certain things, right? It's not that you won't be able to learn how to do it on your own more frequently, but I definitely think that it's not going to wipe out the need for that expertise for people to really listen to your brand, to understand what you want to accomplish and help you move forward on your SEO goals. So, what are some of the top 5 actions I think you can take? So, first, we already talked about this, but be where the searchers are. Think of your online ecosystem. When you're creating content, and again, this is not a new strategy, I'm just saying if you're not doing it this way, now is the time to start doing it, right? When you think about your content, you want to take important topics that are useful, valuable, entertaining, creative, going to be something your audiences love. And you really want to repurpose that stuff across all your channels and all your different mediums, right? So we don't need to have a million different topics going in a million different directions. We really want to say this month, our main topic is this, and we're going to talk about it on all our channels, and we're going to talk about it in video and in graphics and in long form and in short form. And we really want to be thinking about our content strategy from an ecosystem perspective, right? And maybe thinking about our content over 6 months or 12 months and mapping out how we're going to serve people in the best way we can. And so, really thinking about if you are not doing different types of mediums, how can you expand into that? So, if you've been posting a lot, but you're not using reels, maybe that's something to start incorporating at least a portion of the time. If you're not using carousels, think about that. If you're doing longer and shorter videos, how do you mix those up? If you're doing blog posts, even on your website and things like that, how can you incorporate different types of media into the blog post? So, one of the cool things I love to do now with my blogging is when we post a blog to learn tourism, I have the ability in my system to create an audio version of the content so people can listen to it instead of just reading it, right? Just really thinking of this. Years ago, I studied with LinkedIn, and the VP of LinkedIn used the example of your content should be like a turkey, and the main kind of ideas of the content, the main topic of the content is that full roasted turkey. But then you're going to carve that turkey up, right? And you're going to utilize it in different ways. And so I think that's really the way we want to think about this. Also, making content useful, human, and structured, right? And I'm going to give you some really key specific tips on how to do this. Answering the next 3 questions your audience has, using headings, using things, formats like the expert recap or quick answer using bullet points. Again, this is nothing new, but it's so important now that our content be easily scannable and that it really serve people, that it really have a purpose. That purpose can be entertainment or humor or emotional connection. It doesn't always have to be sales, but we want to be clear on what the purpose is. And then refresh and reuse content. So we don't always have to start from scratch. We really can go back and look at the pages that are most popular on organic search right now, right? So that means Google, Bing, all the different search engines that are out there. We can also look at the content that has been most popular on our social media And when we find the content that's been most popular and most authoritative, we want to update those things. We want to expand upon them. Maybe we want to link them to other parts of our website that are around the same topic. We really want to think about how we refresh that stuff. Most of you have probably seen this when somebody puts at the top, this article is dated from 5 years ago, but right at the top it says it was updated July of 2025. So that way I know that this stuff is valuable and still useful to me. Then we get a little bit more into the the technical end of things. So Google, of course, has always had their EAT principle, right? If you're not familiar, that's something that's been around for 20 years and they've continued to expand it. It's really about expertise, experience, authority, and trust, and how important it is that your brand, both outwardly and then on the back end and technically, be meeting the right standards for folks. This is things like loading fast on mobile devices. This is things like having HTTPS in your domain, right? That stuff is still really important. Really making sure that you collect and share the different reviews that you're getting, the different PR mentions that you're getting. Maybe you have different experts in your brand, in your organization or business that you can feature their sort of clout, if that makes sense. And then in a more technical way, using things like structured data and schema markup, which again is a more technical thing. It doesn't apply to every piece of content that you put out there. And different industries will have different types of schema that are more valuable, but being able to talk to your developer designer about this and how it can be implemented. And then really leveling up things like the speed, the mobile friendliness, schema as well plays a role here, and just the context. So understanding that people are now searching by voice, they're searching by image. Everybody's using their phone for a wide variety of things. They're using their iPads, their tablets. And then things like sitemaps or robots.txt tags. Those are things that help search engines and now AI bots go into your website and really database the information there. So a robots.txt allows you to block out certain parts of your website or pieces of content. And sitemaps really highlight the content that you want to be the focus so that the search engines and the AI bots really know these pages are the things we want you to index and look at and utilize, right? So just making sure you have all those technical ducks in a row. And you'll see the page speed, right? 2.5 seconds on desktop, 4 seconds on mobile. Those are the current standards. Again, that varies when we look at different industries and different keywords and things like that. But overall, people are making their decisions quick, right? So I want to drill down a little bit more and highlight some things out of these 5 sort of areas. One is, what do we mean by answer your customers' next 3 questions? And again, I got to shout out Neil Patel for this. I think it's a really great formula and way of thinking that makes it a little easier when you're developing content. So when someone basically lands on your content, regardless of what it is, any page on your website, a blog post, FAQs, any type of video from your social media, posts from your social media, all of that stuff, they usually have a main question in mind. There's a reason they're engaging with you for some reason. Again, it's not always sales oriented, but there's usually something driving them. And the suggestion really is, when you're building content and you're addressing a particular topic, to think about the next 3 questions that go with that topic, right? So you can see the example here. Let's say I make a page on my website and I'm a destination up in Maine. I make a page about when to come and see the fall colors in Maine, right? Essentially, that's a primary question we know people ask. I'm actually going to Maine in about a week, which I'm really excited about. I love it up there. It's a beautiful place to go in the fall. But essentially, that's not the only question they're going to ask, right? There's going to be additional questions that might come after that. So when you think about your audiences and who you're trying to attract, it's the main question is, where do I go to see the fall foliage in Maine? But the next 3 questions might be, when is the peak time for that? What kind of accessible trails or spots outside to go see the foliage you have for people that, are seniors or maybe have different abilities, or maybe they have small children? And then what other things can we do while we're there? What local events or restaurants or attractions are going to be happening during the fall season? And how can we make sure that when they find us to answer that question about fall foliage, that they actually get this more robust kind of response so that we're helping them take those next steps to their planning, right? And again, you can use this idea no matter who you are, no matter what kind of brand you have or what products and services you're offering. When you focus your FAQs on different questions, really making sure you cover all the bases. When you write pages of your website, how can you make sure those pages address like the next three logical questions that are going to come up? If you're writing a post about things on social media, how do we make sure that maybe the first sentence or two or three even is about the main topic? But then we can also talk about other things we know people are going to ask or are going to want to know once they've engaged with us. The other thing you'll see in those recommendations, those 5 top recommendations, is this idea of content formats. So, really thinking about how do we make sure that our content, especially on our websites, is formatted in a way that not only still meets our standards from before, because these are not actually that new. These, again, are sort of a rebirth of kind of old strategy that we've been doing. We're just taking it to the next level. And also, like, how can we make sure that we're really speaking not just to people and what they need, but to the AI bots and what they are looking for? So, these content formats, again, are something that Neil Patel has been studying and I have been really looking at and implementing into different strategies. And not only with AI overviews and ChatGPT and things like that, but this also is very helpful with voice search if you want to make more of a push into voice search, right? Essentially, I think it's key to just can keep using your H1, H2, H3. And hey, Brenda, I see your question. I'll give you Neil's name at the end and you can easily Google him. But yeah, the headings H1, H2, H3, those have always been important and they are still important, right? So we want to format our website pages with clear scannability for the user and also for the bots. Also, summary boxes and bullets. So, having really clear, scannable lists of things, items of things, summary sections. So, maybe you write 2 or 3 paragraphs in a blog, and then you have a little box that summarizes what the blog is about, right? And then you write 2 or 3 more paragraphs, and then you summarize those paragraphs again. Depending on length, you might have multiple boxes, but really recapping inside of the long form content is going to be super useful. And then FAQs have been important again for things like the knowledge panels and the featured snippets inside of Google search and Bing search. I think those are going to become even more valuable, right? So go over your FAQs, make sure you're covering all your bases, expand the FAQs if you need to, group them together by topic. So don't just have 50 things in a long list of FAQs, right? Make sure that you actually have questions about this and they're in a little section, then questions about this topic in a little section. That way it makes it again easier for both people and the AI to come in, sort through things and understand how to grab quick answers that it's going to deliver when it comes to people looking for different content, ideas, products, services, etc. And you'll see there's some formats that have already been outlined. So the expert recap, the quick answer, the local insight, and the key trends. These are all great little headers that you can include in your content. And these are examples of how you utilize that, right? So expert recap, why sustainability matters for small business. So I might have a blog post titled that. I might write a really in-depth blog, but throughout, I might have little expert recaps of the different parts of what I'm saying so that it's easy to grab a summary off of the content. Local insights. This is great if you're a destination or your physical location. How can you give people a reason to come and connect with you, but then you're providing more information about the local area, right? Key trends. AI loves trends. So that is a great way to keep track of kind of what's hip, what's cool, and incorporate that into some of your content. And Cameron, I see your question. How do you set up a Google search carousel when you search a city, images with a pin of location? If you will drop your email in here, I will actually follow up on that. That's a more detailed question because you don't just set up a Google search carousel. But I'm glad to send you some information about how that works. If you and anybody else who would like that information, feel free to drop your email in there and I'll forward you some stuff about what's going on with that. Google's making a lot of changes. They have particularly pushed into the travel and tourism world pretty heavily. And I think there's lots of different things that they're doing now. Some of them are connected to Google Ads. So you can't really end up in there without running advertising and being part of, they have a things to do piece that you can connect with as well. That's not ad related, but it is more of you have to do some technical stuff on your website. So yeah, I see lots of folks drop some information in there. I will definitely grab this information before we close out, and I will make sure that I send you guys some information on that. Again, if you're in the travel and tourism world, I will say there's a never ending list of things going on when it comes to travel and tourism in the Google world, especially because they've been pushing into that industry for the last 15 to 20 years, and they're going to keep doing that. The next tip I want to give you is around Google Lens. So, Google Lens, and I think this also connects into things like Instagram and Pinterest, right? Where we have a lot of visuals now that are the focus, right? Visuals are going to play a bigger role when it comes to AI being in charge of how we're engaging with search, right? Google Lens lets people search using photos and screenshots in their phone camera. So being able to take a picture of something and ask Google what it is, right? Take a picture of a product and ask Google where to find it. That's already happening. And again, we see Instagram and Pinterest using some of this with their shopping features. Essentially, when you're adding photos to your website, especially, it's going to be really important to take those extra steps now to optimize those photos. So again, this is not a new strategy. This is an old strategy. And essentially it's just a rebirth of that strategy to another level. So really making sure that you have high quality, unique, and relevant images in different places. So contextually understanding that your images should support your content, making sure that you have larger pixel sizes sometimes so they look great. At the same time, you need to optimize your images and make sure they're in the right format. So JPEGs have been our traditional format. There's lots of new formats coming out for websites specifically. If you have a website, your designer may have already implemented some of this, and it's so they'll load faster. Historically, we've said you can have a photo that's 1,000 pixels wide by 300 high, but we want it to be under 300 kilobytes for load time. They're dropping that down now to 200 kilobytes. So it's this idea that we want great photos that are going to be beautiful and attractive and gain attention, especially when we're talking about social media feeds. And also, we don't need things that are 2 megabytes. We really have to learn how to edit our photos well and make them web ready in a lot of ways. And again, if you have a great web designer, your website might already have a system that's taking your photos and doing that. Luckily, on social media, they often compress the photos automatically. You also want to make sure that when you're using photos on your website, don't call them IMG 6578, right? Actually go through and name your photos if you can, and name them something that explains exactly what they are, and then match that name to the alt text on your website. This is really going to help as people start to use their cameras more to find things. Again, as people start to use more voice search. And most of all, this actually helps people across the board that have different types of physical capabilities to have a better experience when they're using assistive technology. So again, this has always been important, but I think it's becoming even more important. I also wanted to give you a checklist. And actually, Tammy, I see your comment there. You've been running a lot of ads for the past 20 years. Basically, when we started the internet, absolutely. And you need to get it going again. Just to be clear, I don't actually handle marketing campaigns for people. But again, I've screenshotted your email here. I'll send you some information about folks that I know are doing that you might want to consider. So, what to ask your website and marketing teams, whether you have in house people that are handling your marketing, whether or not you have an in house designer, whether or not you're working with a vendor, you're working with a freelancer, whatever it is, I think we got to start asking some questions about our websites. And most of all, when I did the poll, I'm going to share those results right now. You can see again, a lot of you are already doing SEO, right? That's great. Just so you know, SEO is not the only thing to do. So for the 23% of you or 25% of you that are not quite doing it, no worries. I think that's something to think about as you're going forward, how you're showing up in these different AI platforms. But again, if you're already doing well on social media, you're doing well with PR or running ads or just getting foot traffic, We don't have to just start a strategy to start a strategy, right? We have to have a purpose behind it. But you'll see when we look down just at, do you have a web designer to work with regularly? About 60% of you said yes, and about 40% of you said no. I'm really going to advocate that going forward into the future, unless you are a highly technical person that runs your own website and you feel confident engaging with code and other things like that, it's really valuable now to start establishing a relationship with someone that can be your go-to person who really gets to know your website, who understands basic analytics, and that can help you with some basic optimization going forward and is interested in learning that their industry is changing. And so all web designers and developers should be getting up on this. All marketers should be getting up on this stuff. So these are my short list of questions I think are important, right? So are we always approaching it from a mobile first perspective? Lots of people, again, use their phones and their tablets for everything. Are we testing our page speed? Are we implementing any structured data or schema for different things? Again, you may find if you're a small business, you don't need structured data or schema. That's fine, but it's a good question to ask, right? Are we formatting our FAQs so that they are really easy, like I mentioned before, for snippets, right? To grab, for the AI bots to grab information, right? So do we have it well organized? One thing we know about the human brain does not want long lists of things. We avoid that. And in a lot of ways, the bots avoid that. So again, if you have long FAQs, really making them usable and well organized and clear is going to be valuable, right? Do we have sitemaps? Do we have a robots TXT? Are they up to date, right? Or how are we handling our 301 redirects? So if we've changed things on our website, if we've changed our domain, especially, huge deal. When you change your domain or redesign your website, you absolutely want an SEO specialist to help you at this point. Make sure that you don't lose your authority. But especially when you're deleting content off your website, have you double checked to make sure that's not a page that is getting a lot of attention and organic search traffic? And if it was a page getting a lot of organic search traffic, have we redirected it to a new page so we don't lose that traffic? So do we have a way to talk about that type of thing when we're changing our websites? Are we losing any organic traffic? And is our content strategy AI friendly? Are we learning, right? Are we educating ourselves about this and making sure that the content we put out will be as useful and awesome as possible for people, but also friendly to the bots and serving them what they need in order to consider us a good resource when they're answering questions? And I think what we're going to see overall is that success metrics in the SEO world are going to dramatically change in the next few years. How we define success is going to just evolve. It's going to become, I think, more about engagement and interactivity. I think we're going to see a lot of different things change about how we track conversions, right? That's another question you can ask, especially your web designer or marketing team. How are we tracking conversions? What are those conversions? Conversion tracking is actually a more, I think, in-depth thing to have to approach. It can be highly technical. So it's really important to have those discussions, I think, this year and really clarify some of that stuff and invest in work on your website and have somebody that you can go back to regularly and invest with who's not learning your website every time, somebody who's really gotten to know it and understands how it works. I know we're wrapping up. We're coming to the top of the hour. I want to encourage folks, if you've got any other questions, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to answer that one question. I do want to jump into the Q&A really quick. Michelle, can you share a good example of a web page that showcases summary boxes and bullets in an SEO or AI friendly way? Honestly, I do not have an example prepared today. Again, Michelle, if you want to drop your link in there and I see or email in there, I see everybody else's emails. I'm glad to go ahead and include that. And when I send out the recording and when I send out the slide deck, I'll make sure that I share some examples of people I think are doing it well. Again, it's very different across the board. So it really depends on your content, the length of content, just stylistically how you're laying out your pages. But I'll definitely try to get at least 3 to 5 examples that I can share with you guys. And then Hannah, I see for writing descriptions, would it be wise to include the company name in each description or alt text? No. What you want in the description of your photos is actually what the photo is. I would not add the company name over and over. That's actually a form of keyword stuffing. And it doesn't really help the person who's using assistive technology, especially, but it has no real purpose for the AI engine at all. It's useless information. So I would just describe the actual photo as it is in as short amount of words as you can, right? The only time it would change is if it's like your logo as a graphic, right? Then you could potentially actually put your name in the description. Or if it's something directly related to your services, like your tours, if you could put that in there, the name of the tour, that would make sense. But we don't want to have a picture of, let's say, the Appalachian Mountains and we're squeezing our business name in there. And then, Sherry, how can you use alt text in social media to gain traction? So, again, alt text is really not about that. Alt text was created for ADA compliance. So, alt text is actually to help people who are using assistive technologies. It allows their system to read what the image is when they can't see it. So, I am not a person who's going to give advice about how you use alt text to gain traction from an SEO perspective. I actually personally feel, and I know there's big arguments in the SEO world about this, I personally feel that it is an abuse of the system. So again, I think it's really about when you had the chance to add alt text, it's a descriptor. It's going to help the bots understand because it's contextually relevant to the written content or the video content or whatever else is connected to that image. And at the end of the day, it's actually really to help people. So again, you might find other SEO people that have a better answer to that or a different answer. For me, though, I think we don't want to use it to gain traction. We really want to use it to help people understand our content in a better way. And then thanks so much. I saw that email in there for additional links. And then share, I see X is the only place you've seen that option. Yeah, so it is actually available in a few other platforms, not necessarily in Meta, which I think is more common. But yeah, no, I think a lot of times that's for different platforms are approaching accessibility in different ways. And so anytime I have the opportunity to use those accessibility tools, I do. But again, I really appreciate y'all being here. I know we're right at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys for the great comments. I'm so glad that this is helpful for everyone. Again, I'm going to do my best to send out information. I'm realizing I took everybody's email, so I'll follow up. But also, when I send out the email on Friday, I'll include all these resources as well. But like I said, final thoughts. I just recapped everything for you that we shared. So you have this general slide. Please don't hesitate to share the recording and slides with other people. And for those of you who are interested and really want to get on the tech side, dig deep. Neil Patel is one of the longest running SEO experts in the world. He runs a global company. He offers a ton of blogs and free webinars. I sit through a lot of them just because I like to bounce what I'm seeing in my small world with what he's seeing on a global scale, right? But he always says SEO is a race, not a sprint. So most of all, I just want you to remember that we're all in this together. Everybody's life is changing. Everybody's going to be impacted. It's going to create some disruption, but it's also going to create a lot of opportunity. So thank you all so much for being here. Like I said, I will email you on Friday with all this information, and I hope that you will join us next month. We'll be doing another digital drop-in on user-generated content on August 13th from 12:10 to 1 p.m. I think that's the Wednesday, and I hope I got the date right. But if you're interested in user-generated content, I will have an amazing professor joining us who wrote his dissertation on UGC, especially in the tourism and travel world. And we're just going to talk about myths that people have about UGC and how you can generate more content from the people in your networks. But again, thank you all so much. I love seeing so many people joining me from around the world every month. And again, always consider me a resource. You can reach out to me anytime. Have a great day.